Hello everyone and welcome to this is the sixth and second last webinar related to the Higg FEM verification trail, and today we will focus on the topic of waste, and I'm looking forward to spending the next hour together with you. My name is Karin Ekberg and I'm the CEO of Leadership and Sustainability. I have worked for many years already in the sustainability area in many different sectors, but actually already since 2009, mainly in the textile, apparel, and footwear sector. And we have leadership and sustainability. Our company is now more than 5 years old already, and we are working with the brands and retailers, but also with a lot of suppliers in the sector. Just a brief intro to the GoToWebinar control panel. You are all on mute today, and you can send your questions throughout this entire webinar. So please continue and start doing that whenever you have a question. You open the question box and then you can insert and send your question. And all of you who have registered will receive a copy of this presentation, and you will also receive the recording after the webinar. This is copyrighted material. And then our agenda for today, we will focus on the waste section. We will have time for your questions and for discussion. And we will also give you some information about the services we offer. And let's go there. Here you see the overview of all the different sections, and we are going with the waste section today. So there are a few definitions that we need to understand before we dig into the actual questions. First of all, we have non-hazardous waste. Non-hazardous waste is discarded materials from consumption of goods and services and the manufacture of goods, and it should not be hazardous. And then we have, on the other hand, hazardous waste that could cause harm to public health and or the environment because of its chemical, physical, or biological characteristics. And as an overview of the waste section, here you have all the different questions and their division or differentiation into the different levels. And you can see, again, we have very different distributions of the questions to the different levels depending on which section we are in. So here at level 1, we actually have quite a lot of questions. But at level 2, we also have a lot of questions, and at level 3, there are only 2 additional questions. And let's go to the first section. So this is about the non-hazardous waste tracking. So what we would like to see is first, what type of non-hazardous waste do you have? So we should indicate all the different waste streams that you have that are non-hazardous. These could be metal, plastic, paper, cans, food, glass, cartons, and any other category as well. And here already, we will give you the same advice that we have been given several times already. And please make an inventory of all your different waste categories and the volumes that you have or that you generate of the different waste categories. So the better you structure your data collection, the easier it will be for you also to manage your waste. And then regarding hazardous waste, which hazardous waste streams does your site produce? And here we have, for example, production waste, empty chemical drums and containers, film and printing frames, compressed gas cylinders, contaminated materials. And within the hazardous waste, we may also have domestic waste, but domestic waste that is hazardous. So, for example, batteries, fluorescent light bulbs, ink cartridges, and there are several different categories here that actually, although they are seen to be domestic waste, they are actually hazardous waste. And what is important is that you have a monthly monitoring. That's the best, perhaps via invoices, perhaps because you are weighing your waste volumes. And in any case, you should collect all the data into your waste inventory. And then there are also new questions. And remember, always throughout this presentation, whenever we have a question that has been changed or where there has been added guidance in the new Higg FEM 2020, then we will have marked it up with this green box that you can see here at the bottom. So there are new unscored questions that are added. Do you track your non-hazardous waste streams? And do you track your hazardous waste streams? So those are the starting questions, and we will see then later when we go online and show you the demo how this works, because you will get pre-populated tables where you will be able to add the information. And we have also, again here, additional guidance from SAC about how to do the quality checks. So we should review any source data. This may be the invoices, meter logs, etc. And we should do that against the aggregated totals to ensure that it is accurate. We should also compare the current year with historical data. So any significant changes, an increase or a decrease with perhaps over 10%, should be attributed to known changes. And if not, you should investigate it. So of course, if you know that you have produced much less last year, then you will have lower volumes of waste as well. But if you have had very similar production volumes, then of course also your waste volumes should be similar. Then you should ensure that you use the most recent and updated versions of your data tracking spreadsheets. So that is of course important so that you don't mix them up. And then ensure the proper units are reported and verify any unit conversions from source data to reported data. So if you are working with other units, make sure that you select the correct units. And if you have to do any calculations there, make sure that you use the correct unit conversions. Then you should review any assumption or estimation methodology or calculations to ensure that they are also accurate. And you should verify how the specific waste is disposed of and also report the disposal method. So you will see in the table that you will receive for question 1 and 2, there is actually a column where you can add how the waste is disposed of. And furthermore, you should also, of course, ensure that waste vendors have the appropriate license. And most of the time, this is also a legal requirement in your country. And then you should also yes, that of course is linked to the first, to the previous bullet. And then you should add notes also and describe your waste management and disposal processes for this source. So there are, in this table, there are several fields, and we will have a look at that later. And then you should not report data that is not accurate, and you should not report estimated data if it is not supported by verifiable and reasonable accurate estimation. And you remember also from our energy section and from the water section that this type of guidance we have received also for those sections as well. But this shows also how important the data management is. And we are already starting verification right now. We are in the process of verifying several facilities already, and we can see that this is sometimes still an issue to get the data management correct. So spend the time and make sure that you build the structure and the processes, and that you have your data collection sheets with all the calculations and all the explanations with the correct units, etc., that you have that available for yourself, of course, but also, of course, if you are going to do the verification. And the verifiers, so those of us who are doing verifications, we are also asked to make sure that your waste tracking program is accurate. So we should be looking at your data collection processes and your data sources, and the process and tools used to aggregate the data. And if there are any errors or inconsistencies, we should make sure that this is corrected, and we should of course also report that then online in the tool in the comment box that we have. So those are the question 1 and 2. Those are of course the basics of the entire waste section. And now the next section is about segregating the waste streams. Does your facility segregate all waste streams into non-hazardous and hazardous waste and store them separately? And the first step is to make sure that legal requirements related to waste are met. This should include all the steps involved, namely generation, collection, segregation, storage, transportation, treatment, and disposal. So you can think of it as a sort of a life cycle of your waste. When you go through all your processes in your facility, you can consider where is waste generated, how do we collect it, how do we segregate it, store it, transport it, treat it, and how is it disposed of. And this is actually a good idea in many ways to think about, like, what is the life cycle? What are the steps that are taking place in our factory regarding waste, but also regarding other environmental impact categories? So the suggested upload here is photos of segregated storage sites. And you should also be able to provide sufficient working instruction or standard operating procedures and signs for handling and segregating the waste. This can be in the form of training and awareness campaigns, and it can also be in the form of posters at the work site, work instructions, or different signage. And then question number 4 is about the hazardous waste storage requirements. So this is, of course, one of the very important and very strict requirements that we have. And the question is, does your facility have well-marked designated hazardous waste storage areas and containers? And you should be able to upload photos of these. And then there are a lot of new requirements actually and specifications in managing hazardous waste storage area. So as a follow-up question to this question here, there are lots of additional information that we are asking for. So we would like to see that your hazardous waste storage area is clearly marked, and that all hazardous waste categories are labeled with their contents, that it is protected from the weather, ventilated and dry, protected from unauthorized employees, which means this should be a locked area, explosion-proof lighting, no water drains where liquids could spill into and cause contamination of soil and groundwater, or contamination of your wastewater treatment. And then eating, smoking, and drinking are not permitted. Flammable substances should be kept away from heat. Incompatible waste must be segregated. So there are very large incompatibility charts regarding chemicals, for example, which chemicals can we store together, which cannot be stored together. And the same we have for the different hazardous waste categories. So this is important that you are aware of those incompatibility charts and that you have implemented them. Then you need to have spill response equipment and personal protective equipment located nearby as well. And of course, the people who are working here and their visitors as well should be using appropriate PPE. So also during verification or when you have visitors into your factory, please make sure that the visitors are using the PPE exactly the same way as the workers or like you would be doing. And that's also important. If you have an area where you need a certain PPE, where you need goggles, for example, or where you need a hearing protection, there also all visitors should be using them. And then we have also want to know that the storage containers are in good condition, appropriate for the contents, closed and clearly labeled with the contents. Containers must have lids, don't forget that, and they must be secured to prevent falling and safely stacked as well. So sometimes we can see that in chemical storage areas, but also in hazardous waste storage areas, that the containers, they are stored on top of each other, and at a certain height, then suddenly it's not as stable anymore as it should be. And then, of course, you need to have enough space between the different container rows so that people can move in between there as well. So those are really important criteria and requirements. And so please go through them one by one and make sure that you have that. And we will have a look at that online later, but you have all those questions online as well. And then for the non-hazardous waste storage area, quite similar as for the hazardous waste storage area, but there are a few, the restrictions are of course not that strict. So does your facility have well-marked designated non-hazardous waste storage areas and containers? And you should then also upload the photos of storage areas. And then there are also some new requirements, so let's have a look at that. They, of course, for non-hazardous waste as well, you need to have them clearly marked and labeled with their contents. Protected from the weather, ventilated and dry. Flammable substances are kept away from heat. And then you need to use PPE as well. The storage containers need to be in a good condition, appropriate for the contents, closed and clearly labeled with the contents, and they must be secure to prevent falling and safely stacked, exactly like for hazardous waste. So, but you can see the list is a bit shorter here than for the hazardous waste storage area. And then there is also one question here related to open burning and dumping, and you should actually not be burning your waste openly on your site, and you should also not be dumping your waste openly on your site. And the question is, does your facility forbid open burning and dumping on site? And we would actually like to see a documentation which shows that you have forbidden burning and dumping on site. And this is, of course, you know that the risks are very significant if you would be doing any of those practices. So burning your waste, you may create air emissions, that harmful air emissions. You may get an uncontrolled situation where you cannot stop the fire anymore. And also dumping on site, obviously, we have actually seen electronics being dumped on site at one facility once, and this is of course not acceptable. The weather and water will leak heavy metals into the soil and into the underground. And also when you are burning, you may create residues that are harmful as well. And of course, soil and groundwater contamination is such an important area. And just to make sure that you don't cause any soil and groundwater contamination. It is very, very expensive and technically very, very difficult to clean up contaminated soils and groundwater. And you can ask me, I have actually spent the first years of my career cleaning up old landfills for toxic waste. And these are very, very costly projects. And you can have to do this for years and years. Okay, so then the employee training. The question is, does your site provide training to all employees whose work involves hazardous waste handling? And you need to have a training about proper handling, storage and disposal techniques and procedures, specific operational procedures for waste minimization, and use of personal protective equipment. And here we now have a new secondary questions to this same question number 7. How many employees were trained, and how frequently do you train your employees? And we would like to see here the list of the trained individuals and then the training materials as well. So very often we may see a list of people who have joined the trainings, perhaps a calendar and some certificates, but not so often the factories have also uploaded the training material So please consider that and upload that material as well, because we would like to see what do you actually cover in your training, and is it relevant really for this question and for this area. All right, and now we come into the quantitative area again. So this is about the waste volume baselines. And now remember, in the energy section, the water section, and in this section, the waste section, we have a very similar approach to the quantities. So this question is, has your facility set a baseline for solid waste? And then you should select all the sources of waste for which your facility has set a baseline. You should then add the source of waste will actually be pre-populated in your table, and we will have a look at that later. Is the baseline absolute or normalized? What is the baseline quantity? And then unit of measure, enter the baseline year, and how was your baseline calculated, and was the baseline verified? And this question, was the baseline verified? You can respond yes to this question, either if the baseline was verified during a Higg FEM verification in the previous year, or if you have done an internal or external verification of the data by someone who is competent and trained to do this type of verification of data. And let me give you an example as well of how to calculate a normalized baseline. So let's imagine that we have, and this is just an invented case with simple numbers to show you the principle of how to calculate. So let's consider that we have 1 million pieces of a certain product produced in 2020 and shipped. So remember, in the site information, we are asked to report the volumes that we have shipped. And so we have 1 million, and we had textile waste, 50,000 kilogram, and then the normalized baseline equals 50,000 divided by 1 million gives us 0.05 kilogram textile waste per piece of product produced. So this is the very simple approach to normalization. And you need to decide, do I want to work with absolute numbers, or do I want to work with normalized numbers? And very often the waste that you generate depends on the actual production volumes that you have. So if your production volumes goes up, then your waste volumes will go up. If your production volumes are reduced or going down, then also your waste volumes will be going down. And this means that if you would keep an absolute baseline, you would have to deal with your differences in production volume. So your waste volumes will go up and down depending on your production, and then it will be very difficult for you to compare year by year and show that you have really saved or reduced your waste volumes. And that is the reason why we very often recommend that you normalize your baselines. Because when you normalize, you relate your waste volume to your actual production. And then that KPI, that normalized baseline that you have, will then, the values will stay more constant year by year. And remember, we talked about this for the energy, and I believe also for the water section. It is also possible to normalize by standard allowed minutes. So for example, if you have very different products that you are producing. So you are producing, one year you are producing a lot of underwear, and another year you are producing a lot of sweatshirts. Then if you normalize by the number of pieces, again, your KPI will be different, because you can produce so many more panties, for example, in a year than what you can produce sweatshirts. And that would then be the reason to use the standard allowed minutes. And the standard allowed minute, you can go back to the previous webinars to see the definition. But the standard allowed minutes basically is a number that it has been calculated to tell you how much time you need for the production of one specific product. So then for panties, for example, perhaps the standard allowed minutes is 10 minutes, let's say. But for a sweatshirt, perhaps the standard allowed minutes is 60 minutes, so 6 times longer. And then if you normalize with the standard allowed minutes, you will actually also again moderate then the influence of the fluctuating product types that you may have in the factory. And in the How to Higg guide, if you go there, you will see a lot of examples related to the standard allowed minutes and related to the normalization. And it's really important that when you set your targets that you figure this out. What is the influence of my production on my waste in this case? And remember when we talked about water, for example, if you don't have any wet processes, if you only have people working there who are using the water for wash basins and for toilets, for example, perhaps for the kitchen, then it might make sense to do the normalization of your water consumption with the number of employees. So you need to think this through. What is the dependence of my energy, water, and waste related to which criteria or to which parameter? And then, of course, also, if you have a normalized baseline here for waste, for example, then you should also set normalized targets because you want to compare your result year by year with your target and then, of course, compared to your baseline. The baseline is just the starting point that you have. This is the year and the starting point that you have for your improvements. Okay, so then also what is important, but the system should actually correct that. So 0.05 you should be writing and not 0.05. So you may be aware that, for example, in Europe we usually write 0.05. And so we have a different writing, but it is important that you write it this way. And SAC has actually told me that the system corrects this automatically. And then for the waste volume baselines, again, we have some guidance for you regarding the data. So do review the source data and draw normalizing metric data against aggregated totals to ensure that they are accurate. You should select the appropriate baseline type, as we already discussed. You should ensure that the proper units are reported and verify any unit conversions. You should enter the baseline year, and you should provide sufficient details on how the baseline was calculated. So again, in the Higg tool online, when you add your normalized baseline numbers, you cannot add normalized units. Unfortunately, there are only absolute units in the tool right now, and therefore it is even more important that you explain how your baseline was calculated, because the verifier and you as well, you cannot read it from the unit that you have indicated. You cannot indicate kilowatt hour per employee or kilowatt an hour per piece of product. Those normalized units are not available, unfortunately, in the drop-down box there. And then only select yes to the question, was the baseline verified, if the baseline data was fully verified by a previous verification or by a competent person, internal or external, who has done that verification. And you should, of course, also have the corresponding documentation available for that. And then you should not report a baseline that is not accurate. You should not report a baseline that is based on insufficient data, and you should not report an estimated baseline if it is not supported by verifiable and accurate estimation methodology and data. You are allowed to use estimated values, but you should be able to show how you have estimated them. And the verification guidance, the verifier should review the source data and aggregated data tools for the baseline year. And the records of the baseline data verification were available. And we should, of course, also report if there are any errors or inconsistencies. So those are the waste volume baselines. This is about the quantities of your waste. And now we have the waste disposal method baselines. And so these are also about quantities, but those are the quantities related to the different disposal methods that you might have. And this is now the complication here in the waste section compared to the energy and the water section, that we are also talking about the disposal methods. So the Higg FEM in the waste section wants you to reduce your waste consumption or waste generation, and also to improve the disposal methods. So you should be moving from the worst disposal methods to better disposal methods. So for example, if you can move from landfill to incineration with energy recovery, that is a better disposal method than what landfill is. And then the question is, did you set a baseline for your waste disposal methods for your facilities over waste? And then you should, and the table again is pre-populated, and then you should indicate the disposal method, what is the baseline quantity, enter the baseline year, how was your baseline calculated, was the baseline verified? And here I want to give you another example on how to calculate this. And again, this is a very simple example. So we have very simple numbers. Again, our total waste generation in this case, our total waste generation was 1 million kilogram. And the total waste that was disposed in the incineration plant was 50,000 kilogram. This means that the incineration baseline is 50,000 divided by 1 million times 100 for percent equals 5%. And here again, we have some do's. Review source data. Please do review source data. Please ensure all waste sources are included in the facility's total waste quantities and quantities for each disposal method. And then provide sufficient details on how the baseline was calculated, and only select yes to the question if it was verified, if the baseline actually was fully verified. Do not report a baseline that is not accurate, and don't report a baseline that is based on insufficient data. And you are allowed to report an estimated baseline, but you need to show how you calculated this. And now, question number 10 is about the waste quantity reduction targets. Does your facility set formal targets to reduce waste quantity? What is the target change for waste generated from this source? What is the target year? And then you should also describe the measures planned to achieve this target. And here you see a screenshot from that question. And the formal target should include a baseline performance value, the targeted reduction. So for example, if you want to reduce by 5% per piece, you should insert -5 into the tool. You should have an expected start and completion date. And of course, the target should be relevant to the site's most significant sources of waste. And it should cover at least 80% of the total waste consumption in order to get a full score. If it covers 50 to 79%, you get a partial score, which means half of the total score you could get for this question. And if the target cover less than 50%, then you actually don't receive any score, any points at all. And the same here, review the target to ensure all aspects are covered, and enter the targeted reduction as a percentage, and make sure that you enter a negative percentage for a reduction target. You should again say if the target is absolute or normalized, and provide sufficient details on how the target will be met. Do not report a target that is not accurate, and don't report a target that is based on insufficient data. And regarding estimation, we have already covered this, so I will not go through this again in detail. And the verification is also clear. We need to make sure that also supporting evidence is clear, and we need to also review the facility's operations. And again, if there are any inconsistencies, we should report that as well. So this is now about reducing the waste volumes. And now the next question is about improving the waste disposal methods. Did you set a target for improving waste disposal methods for your facilities overall waste? You should include the waste disposal method. What is your target change for this method of disposal? What is the target year? And then you should describe the measures planned to achieve this target. And I want also to give you some help related to the waste disposal methods. And you can see here the hierarchy of different waste disposal methods. So you need to set separate targets, and you should indicate -5 if it's if you are wanting to reduce. But you can see here the hierarchy, and this is really important. The best you can do is prevent the waste from the beginning so that you don't have that waste at all, and then reduce the volumes. You can reuse, you can recycle, biological treatment may be possible. Incineration with energy recovery is quite a good method for waste that you cannot improve in any other way with any of the steps above here. Then incineration without energy recovery is actually not a very good solution, and landfill is actually the worst solution. So landfilling waste is not a good idea at all, and especially not with hazardous waste. But even with domestic waste, it's not a perfect solution. Generally, it is said that incineration with energy recovery is a better treatment for waste that you cannot recycle or reuse in any other way. Then we have here, one example on how to improve your waste disposal. So for example, the target can be to decrease the amount of production-related waste sent to landfill by 10% per unit of production. And you can begin sending textile, plastic, and leather scraps waste to vendors that have energy facility for processing. Or perhaps you can even recycle, that would be even better. And the expected reduction would be 10%. The cost in this case is 0, and the completion date we have set 2021. And obviously your implementation plan needs to be a bit more detailed and then this also with the person who is responsible, and perhaps you have more details about how to go about this. And so there are also some other examples I want to give. You can increase the quantity of waste sent to external recycling and biological treatment in order to make sure that you don't have waste going into landfill or even incineration without energy recovery. You can switch to a disposal or treatment method that recovers usable aspects of or usable parts of the waste. And you can also use the hierarchy that we were talking about. So the waste source reduction, reusing, upcycle, avoiding, recycle, energy or material recovery, or any other treatment. So there may be a lot of different treatment methods that are available to you. Obviously, depending on where you are located, you also have to rely on the local infrastructure that you have. And perhaps in some countries or in some regions, certain infrastructure is not available to you. So you will need to check what is possible for me to do, and then seek to improve your disposal methods. And the guidance that we have from SAC about those formal targets for improving the waste disposal methods, you should base the target on a formal evaluation of improvement opportunities and actions. So again, when you have your data table with all your different waste categories and the volumes and the waste disposal methods, you can actually work in that table and consider different improvement options that you have and discuss them even in that table as well. You should then also define the exact target quantity expressed as a percentage and define the start date of the target, define the end date of the target, and establish procedures, of course, also to review the target. And we generally recommend to have at least quarterly reviews. If you can have monthly reviews, that would be even better, of course, and I know that some of you already have that as well. And then there is additional guidance related to the data management, and I will not repeat that. You know that already, and you can go back to the previous slides and have a look there. And then you need a waste implementation plan. So the question is, does your facility have an implementation plan to reduce waste quantity or improve type of treatment? And you should have a plan showing specific actions designed to achieve the targeted reductions in waste consumption. And the next question is, has your facility reduced waste quantity or improved the type of treatment in this reporting year compared with the established baseline? So it's actually the improvement that you have done in this reporting year, so in 2020, compared with your established baseline. If you have had improvements in earlier years, you cannot account for them here. And you should fill in the list of sources that have been improved, the percentage of improvement achieved in the last calendar year, and a description of the plan and strategies used to achieve those achievements. So when you set your targets, you should also describe the plans you have, but here you speak about which actions did I implement and which ones were successful in order to reducing the waste quantities. And there are lots of do's here again, and I will not go through them into detail. It's really the same guidance as we have had before, also related to the verification. And now the next question is, has your facility improved your waste disposal methods for overall waste in this reporting year compared with the baseline? And you select the baseline year, what was the percentage change, and you describe the strategies used to achieve this improvement. And then, of course, the same guidance as we had previously. We will not go through that in detail again. Now, the question number 15 is very different. This is about validating the final disposal and treatment of all hazardous waste. And we would like to see that you, on a regular basis, actually audit the treatment facilities for hazardous waste, not for non-hazardous waste. That's not necessary, but for hazardous waste. So you should keep track of the waste. Every 3 years is recommended that you do an on-site audit. And this is also important because, of course, you are responsible for what happens with your waste and that it is treated properly. And therefore, you should actually follow through until the waste is actually treated and check that it is done accordingly. Then question number 16, waste diversion and zero waste to landfill. And this goes into the guidance that I gave before, that landfill disposal is actually one of the worst treatment technologies that you can have. And therefore, we have the question here. Sorry, this is not, the question is, this question, sorry, the question is actually not what is written here. It is what is written here in the screenshot. Has your factory diverted at least 90% of all discarded materials from landfills, incinerators, and the environment? Sorry for that. Here we have was probably a copy and paste from the previous question. So this question, number 16, is about diverting at least 90% of all discarded materials from landfills, incinerators, and the environment. And this is quite a challenging question, also depending on the infrastructure that you have. And therefore, again, here it's important that you have all your data in one place. And I can tell you that during verification, many facilities do not have the numbers in place to show if they actually have diverted at least 90% of all their materials from landfills, because they haven't completed their waste inventory and listed exactly which volumes go where for treatment. And then we have the question number 17, and this is the last question. We are now at level 3. Does your facility upcycle some of its waste or insert its waste into a circular economy system? And you can engage your material suppliers, buyers, and waste management contractors to find creative suppliers. Perhaps your buyers already have some ideas, or you are already working on joint projects to do this. So consider what are the opportunities locally where I am. Perhaps there are other opportunities also that are not locally, but that are regional or even with other countries and together with your buyers. And with that, that was the last question. And let me now go to the demo. So here, the waste section. And here it is actually, this time is quite easy. For energy and water, you have to scroll down and click for every single one. But here for the non-hazardous waste streams, you can actually, you just go into here and then you click the ones that you have. And in this case, you can see we have materials, metal, plastic, paper, food, other, and general or unspecified waste. And then the question is, do you track your non-hazardous waste streams? And then if you say yes, you will get this pre-populated table with all the different categories, sources that you have. And then one by one, you should say, do I track this source? Yes or no? Description, what is it? The quantity, the unit of measure, and if it is weighed or if it's estimated. I hope you don't have unknown, because then you don't probably haven't listed it at all. And then how was this waste disposed of? And here you also have a selection of different disposal methods that you can select. So you see reuse, recycle, energy recovery, etc. And hopefully you will not click on this one, on-site landfilling or dumping, or on-site incineration. In some cases, there may be factories who have on-site incineration under controlled conditions, but this is in an oven made for that, and where they then use the energy that that is produced. We see that sometimes with, for example, textile waste, that it is incinerated on site and then with energy recovery. And that is, of course, okay. And then you should describe your waste management processes and disposal processes as well. And then the next question is about the hazardous waste streams. And here again, you have a long list that you can click. Once you have done that, you get a pre-populated table. So do you track your hazardous waste streams? And then you get this pre-populated table. And it's basically the same questions as previously, with the difference that you should also indicate if all your hazardous waste transporters, if they are licensed and permitted, you should upload a copy of the permit as well. And now, does your facility segregate all waste streams into non-hazardous and hazardous waste? And then, does your facility have well-marked designated hazardous waste storage area and containers? And if I say yes here, then I will have a lot of additional questions that I need to respond to. So the hazardous waste storage area is ventilated, dry, and protected from the weather and fire risk. The hazardous waste storage area is protected from unauthorized employees. So you remember the long list we had, and here those questions come again, and you have to click them yes one by one. And then the same, does your facility have well-marked designated non-hazardous waste storage area and containers? And here you again have to click on those follow-up questions. Does your facility forbid open burning? Open burning is forbidden, open dumping is forbidden, and then it goes on and on here. I think we would like to go also to see the baseline for the disposal methods. So this is question number 9. Did you set a baseline for waste disposal methods? And here you can see the disposal methods. Have you set a baseline? So you have all the different disposal methods that are available, and then have you set a baseline for this method? What is the baseline quantity, the year? How was your baseline calculated? Was it verified? And yes. And then the next question is, does your facility set formal targets to reduce waste quantity? And you can see here, for example, -5 means -5%. Yeah. And I would say that we end the demo here and go back to the slides. So you should now be able to see my slides, and let's open up for questions. Let's have a look if we have questions. Okay, the overall baseline year and disposal method baseline should be the same year or can be different. Yes, usually it is easier if you have the same baseline year, because then you are working with basically the same numbers and with the same year and with the same trends. So I actually recommend to set, even for your other categories as water and energy as well, to set the same baseline year. That also helps you with your long-term strategy, because your long-term strategy needs to have a plan for more than 3 years. And then if you have the same baseline year and the same target year, then it's much easier to operate like that. But there is no formal requirement from SAC that you have to have the same baseline year. We sometimes see differences in that facilities have different baseline years. What I do not recommend is to change your baseline year every year, because then it is not effective. You should keep the baseline year at least for a while before you change it. What will be the target year for question number 10? Let's go back to question number 10. So you are talking about the waste quantity reduction target. Does your facility set formal targets to reduce waste quantity? And it is up to you to decide the target year. So it can be 2022, 2021, 2023. You are allowed to set any target year that you would like to have, perhaps not too far into the future. And it should be aligned with your long-term strategy as well. So perhaps you have a long-term strategy for 2023, and then you could have a target year of 2023. But again, there is no requirement from SAC on what you should actually have. So let me go to our question slide again. All right. Yes. Here we have one question. All our waste is sent to third-party contractor. We do not landfill, recycle, or incinerate any type of waste. Then how to take the target for disposal methods? Yes, you have a situation that you share. Most factories do not have their own landfill, or I don't think anyone have that actually. So you need to understand how your waste service provider, how they are treating your different waste categories. And then you can make sure that you can work on improving the disposal methods. So you will need to work with your waste contractor and ask them how you can improve the disposal methods. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm scrolling back and forth here. Yes, this seems to be the question. If I have missed any question, we will follow up in writing about this. And so let's move on. And let me just show you a few slides about us. this is a slide that represents all our services within leadership and sustainability. We work with brands and retailers and also actually with larger manufacturing groups to develop materiality assessments, risk assessments, assessments of opportunities, but also to develop strategies. We also support with reporting, writing sustainability reports. We work also with brands and retailers to support them with understanding how to select more sustainable materials and products. And of course, as you already know, we do a lot of work in the supply chain and we conduct workshops and trainings as well. And here you can see our contact page. You can book an appointment with me, or you can just contact us via emails. And here, depending on the region and country, you have a few contact persons that you can contact. So please feel free to do that. And you can also go back to our previous webinars. And tomorrow we have the last webinar in this series about chemical management. And if you haven't registered, please feel free to go there and register. You can go to our blog page on the Leadership and Sustainability website, and there you can find the article about our webinars and register also for the chemical management webinar tomorrow. And here you see some of our team members. We are growing, so we have more team members now as well, but you can see them, several of them here. And with that, I would like to thank you so much for joining our webinar. Please complete the survey that you will be seeing immediately after you move out of the webinar. And with that, please stay safe and healthy, take care of yourselves, and goodbye for now. Bye-bye.